Welcome to Follow Me to the MROP, a podcast dedicated to the journey of the masculine soul and the transformative power of initiation. My name is Brian Mueller. I live in suburban Dayton, Ohio, and I made my rites at Pilgrim Park in Illinois in 2014. I'm your host, and in each episode of our show, I'll sit down with one man who has made his rites, and I'll invite him to tell his story. This won't be an abstract explanation or a theological lecture, just a real conversation about what it was like to cross that threshold at the rites and what changed afterward. Before we begin, a quick word of gratitude. This podcast is brought to you by Choosing Presence. We believe that the greatest gift a man can give his community is his own presence. In a world of constant distraction, Choosing Presence provides the tools to help you stay grounded in the now. If you'd like an easy way to begin learning about the practice of presence, you can download the free Practicing Presence app at choosingpresence.org/app. Now, the Men's Rites of Passage, or MROP, is an experience designed to help men move from the first half of life into the second, shifting from a focus on ego and achievement to a life of meaning and soul. On this show, we just don't talk about the rites in theory, we talk to the men who have walked the path. Today, we are joined by a man who has made his rites, and we're going to hear exactly what that journey looked like for him. My guest today is Matt Domyancic. Brother, I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for making the time and for being willing to share your story.
Happy to be here, Brian. Appreciate you and Illumin.
Matt, tell us where you're from and how you spend your time these days.
I live in San Diego, California now. I'm a one-man nonprofit primarily for first responders and veterans. So I am on the phone, Zoom, texting, voice memoing with ex-special operations guys, cops and firefighters all over California, but across the country as well. And just collaborating often with psychologists and trying to get high warrior archetype alpha males open to therapy and self-care and spending more time with their families and taking their foot off the gas and normalizing self-care.
Now let's dive in and talk about the Men's Rites of Passage. The MROP is a unique experience. It's not a retreat or a workshop. It's an initiation. Many men arrive at the rites at a crossroads in their lives looking for something they can't quite name. Before we dive into the why and the how, let's start at the very beginning. When and where did you make your rites?
Mine, I think, was 10 years ago in Big Bear, California.
Who was your weaver and about how many men were there?
It was Father Jim Clarke, and I think Jim Taylor was there as well. Is that the guy with the long hair and Southern accent? I like that guy. My group was big. I'm thinking there was 30 or 40 dudes. It was pretty packed, and I know it was full because there was no more rooms left, so it was pretty packed.
When you think back to that weekend, what's the first image that comes forth for you?
For me, it was being patient, as often is the case on a lot of men's related retreats for me, and holding space often for a lot of other men, including the men that give like the testimonial speeches or some of the staff. Obviously not Father Jim or Jim Taylor, but a lot of other volunteer staff who, very much like other Catholic and evangelical or first responder and veteran retreats, when you get men who have had a powerful experience as something like the MROP or related men's work, and it's done something significant for them. Very often, a year or two later, they want to volunteer and be on staff and be the mentor, the elder. And we can all tend to do this early. If I just started a new diet, or I started a new religious group, or I started working out and lost weight, or this meditation or mindfulness, I want to evangelize it to everyone else and kind of take a teacher role when it's like, whoa, maybe I'm just a rookie and I'm just kind of learning the ropes here. But we get the helper's high, wanting to fix and help everyone else, maybe rather than serve from the soul. And if I could read a quick paragraph from an article I have, service is not an experience of strength or expertise. Service is an experience of mystery, surrender, and awe. Helpers and fixers feel causal. Servers may experience from time to time a sense of being used by larger unknown forces. Those who serve have traded a sense of mastery for an experience of mystery, and in doing so have transformed their work and their lives into practice. And this is from Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond, and it's a longer article, but this has been my experience with a lot of different men's work, as well as like meditation, yoga, or contemplative spiritual retreats. People are excited about helping others, and it's well-intentioned and unconscious, but a lot of them are probably avoiding their own deeper work, and they don't know what they don't know, but they're excited about helping others. So for me, that MROP was holding a lot of space for other people that were super excited about what the MROP meant to them and sort of projecting that onto me when it wasn't a similar experience for me, because I have a much different life history than a lot of men.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, can you summarize what the entire weekend experience was like for you?
For me, it was a lot of self-reflection with my own interior voice, preparing for things that I was going to journal to Father Jim Clarke. For those that know him, at the time was my theology professor in a grad program and my spiritual director, and was a mentor for over 10 years of my life. And just like, wow, I can't wait to talk to Father Jim about this, because of the things that I was seeing and reading with the other men, the staff, the volunteers, not so much the participants. It was more I was reflecting on the staff, the speakers, and the volunteers.
Now, without sharing anything you consider too personal or even confidential, do you have a particular memory or an encounter with another man that you're willing to share that captures what the rites meant to you, or even something that's just really stands out from that experience?
So it wasn't so much what it meant to me, but it may capture this may make the point more clear. Up until this point, the way I'm talking, guys might be like, what the hell's he talking about? So one of the people that gave their testimonial, I would say, they get up in front of the group, was a gentleman who had a lot of trauma and a particular unique background that didn't relate to a lot of other men, which Illumin sometimes does that. I think the virtue signal a bit will pick somebody around like DEI issues, then have them present when 99% of the men, or 98, are straight, white, middle class, affluent, educated males. And then we have somebody talk about something that's not even practical to the rest of us, but we all cheerlead and clap that we're here doing the right thing. And this particular person, like many other men and groups I've been, they selected a speaker who hadn't done his own work and was attached to the wounded part of his story. And so he's up there presenting, he's being super emotional, clearly hasn't done his work for a long period of time, and is getting attention for the wounded part of his story. And then during a meal, he sits down with me and then starts asking me to tell him what my father didn't do that I wished he had done. And for the people out there that don't know, my dad's just turned 81. We're going on a bear hunt in Canada in a couple weeks. He still refs softball, umpires softball, referees basketball. My dad is a good man. We've been friends my whole life, best friends, hunting partners, my sports coach. And he had a tough childhood. He had an alcoholic father. His mom and grandma died when he was in college. Like, not an easy life, but my dad did a lot of things right, and is a very faithful, quiet man of prayer as well. And so this person's pressuring me to tell them where my dad screwed up. And I'm like, actually, he didn't. He didn't read the books that we do on Illumin or with masculine spirituality and psychology, but I read the books and I'm like, my dad did all this for me. And this person then was like, no, you can be honest with me. You can be vulnerable, share. And maybe because I look like a meathead, the ex-football SWAT guy, people think that I may think on appearance that I won't be vulnerable and I don't want to share. And it is a thing that I work with a lot of men that don't want to be vulnerable. But if you push somebody, that's not the best way. So even if I was lying about my father wound or my father hunger, pushing me on it is not going to make me feel comfortable to take the armor off. And this person wouldn't drop it, even though I was telling them the truth in a very grounded manner. And it was just them wanting to have me share with them maybe a common experience of having either an abusive or a negligent father, which is just not the case in my experience. But I was patient with him and other men that wanted to mentor me. And Father Jim observed this afterwards and said, Matt, thanks for having grace for all of those guys that are trying to mentor and elder you. Like, you don't need a redo. You learned most of these lessons from your father and other mentors, elders, and life experiences. I've had a lot of suffering. And I've also done a lot of not just dangerous wilderness trips with my dad, but 10-day silent Vipassana, vision quests, things that were significantly more meaningful and challenging for me than the MROP was.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I want to come back to this in a minute, but first I want to follow that up You gave so much information there, and it's very rich. I appreciate that. I know you as a man that of amazing depth and breadth of experience, and as a man that also works really hard, not only personally on healing his wounds and things like that, but also helping others out there, specifically in the warrior community, as you say. But I want to know what made you decide to register and attend a men's rites of passage.
Probably that I had been involved with the Lumen for a number of years, even before I met Father Jim Clarke. And one of the things that Father Jim agreed to be my spiritual director was that there would be retreats that he would want me to go on either with him or alone and then do reflection and come back. And also, I will say, I looked into the other men's groups, and some of them, I didn't even like their marketing, or from what my friends have said that have gotten a lot out of, why am I blanking on the other big group?
The Mankind Project?
Yeah, the Mankind Project. Like some of my friends that actually found it meaningful said they did pretty hard edge, like yelling and aggressive stuff. And I'm like, man, I've been through football camps, boot camps, prisoner of war training, sniper schools. Like I've already done that type of stuff where like really badass men were hard on me in different ways. So that wasn't appealing to me to go to one where they're going to try to like initiate my warrior archetype when I clearly knew I've already been through the ringer with those types of things. So I still love and adore, even though it may sound critical of a lumen, I love and adore the emphasis on the contemplative spirituality and doing the second half of life, as the Roar might talk about in Falling Upward, and authors like Bill Plotkins and James Hollis. There's a richness to the men's group of Illumin that does have more depth than a lot of the other groups. And so that's why I've always continued to have an interest in trying to stay involved, if that makes sense.
Appreciate that. That's good to hear. But I also want to know, so when you made the decision to attend and maybe you told your partner, you told your dad, you told your friends, what was their reaction to your decision to go to a rites?
I had already done so many other things that it's like Matt's a nerd with the self growth and the healing stuff and the retreats. I mean, that was 10 years ago. And at that point, it had been 20 years of me already attending men's retreats, contemplative retreats, veterans retreats, first responder retreats, that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, when you arrived at the rites, and you said was it a Big Bear Lake? Is that where you were at?
Yeah, it's a mountain, like a mountain region about 2 hours north of Los Angeles.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. But when you arrived at the rites, was there something you were hoping for or wanting to be initiated into?
You know, that's a good question. I think I may have went into it already with some of these reservations and suspicions because I had already been involved with Illumin for so long. And in the Southern California region, I would go to the groups and question things about some of the reactions, the emphasis on politics, and also like, not that I needed it because I had my father and had been in spiritual direction for 20 years. And at that point had probably been in 10 years of psychoanalysis and 20 years of contemplative practices. I think sometimes back then I might have been hoping for a little more community. We need community and we need peers, and men struggle at finding that. I've already had the mentors and the elders, including like Father Jim at the time. So it's not like I needed to go to the MROP to have exposure to a Father Jim Clarke, which I wish every man would have one Father Jim Clarke, even for one MROP in their life. Or we just did another silent Illumin retreat at a monastery with Father Jim for the guys in Southern California. Like, what an experience. I think back then I would be more hopeful for, is there going to be any other men that are going to be like peers of mine? And usually it's somewhat, not now, it could be somewhat of a disappointment because I haven't met a lot of guys that have gone down the rabbit hole of doing the type of work I've done. And I'm not better than anyone by any means. By the grace of God, I had the type of father I did and other mentors early in my life that helped me dig deeper into this, including a lot of women, to be honest, more liberal women that were deeper on the spiritual and psychological journey that I became friends with that pushed and challenged me. So I think I went hopeful, hey, anytime with Father Jim is awesome, soak that up. And will I find community in this space?
Was there anything you were fearing, though, heading into the rites?
No, because I don't have a problem being vulnerable, Brian. So like that type of stuff doesn't, I think a lot of men on any of these things, their fear is like, holy shit, I'm going to have to share part of my story or share my feelings in front of other men. That's so hard. And that's not a problem with me. Like, I'm sentimental. I'll cry watching movies or walking down the street and seeing two old people holding hands or whatever. So I'm not scared of sharing my emotions, the things, and I wouldn't want to talk about all of it since people don't know what it is when they go on it. The types of things they do to try to challenge you there are just not things that were challenging for me based on my previous life experiences.
I understand that, but how did you feel after the rite? So you're there for 4 nights, parts of 5 days. It's a significant amount of time and investment. What'd you come away with? What'd you leave feeling like?
An initial frustration, and then I went home, and back then I got to see Father Jim once a week because he was still teaching at Loyola Marymount, and I was still a grad student there. So I saw him more. I'd see him in classes, but I'd do spiritual direction every week. I'd go for an hour or two of office hours. I usually couldn't get to because so many other students wanted to see him, so I couldn't hog it all. But I would write reflection papers after retreats we did together. And what I did was and I do this even now for my psychiatrist analyst. As I go through my daily experiences, it's almost like the Nation spiritual exam, and I journal about it. And then I send it to my psychiatrist. So by the time I go up for therapy, he's already caught up on my week. I did that with Father Jim. I did that with Father Hurley, my previous spiritual director. So I self-reflected on my experience at MROP and then came in to see Father Jim that next week. And I puckered up because I was like, damn, I was really honest. And I know some of these people in Illumina have been his friends for years, if not decades. And I was really honest, not as far as being critical, but just like, this is my read on them, my impression, where some of them are unconscious of their own areas they need to work on, and where they're, to some degree, quote, getting their rocks off on fixing and helping others. And then as Father Jim's reading it, I'm getting puckered up. Oh my God, maybe I shouldn't have been too honest. I have such a good relationship with Father Jim, and now I'm being critical of Illumin and friends of his. But he read through it, then he just kind of chuckled and, said, Matt, great read. I've known some of these guys all the way back to going to seminary, and you nailed all of it. So, hey, if you've already been initiated in certain ways, you don't need a redo. And you've been lucky enough to have your father and so many other people in life experiences where you learn these lessons that the MROP is initiating other men with. So yeah, you didn't need a redo on that.
Yeah, so it's been about 10 years since you made your rites. What have you taken away from that experience, especially now that you've got a little bit of distance?
The fact that I think it is still so valuable for most men to go and attempt to do something like that, and hopefully not listen to me and see like, you know what? See, I don't need to go on one of these men's retreats. I too have done my work. I too have had mentors and elders. We have a good way of playing mental gymnastics to avoid the type of work that we really need. And I think that the MROP, compared to some of the other ones I've had exposure to, even including the first responder and veteran initiations, and they call them different things, where I would want first responders and veterans to be able to go to an MROP, to be exposed to those teachings if it's, say, Father Jim, right? Somebody that I know that they might feel seen and safe with. But I think it's such a valuable thing, and I have to not be I joke that I'm a judgmental prick, that other men haven't had the opportunities that I've had, and there's such a need for the opportunity. And even now, like, psychedelics are so big, especially for veterans and first responders. But there's they don't do work. You go trip your balls off and then you share. I would want men to do work in community and one-on-one therapy, spiritual direction, and go on an MROP before they go on a psychedelic retreat. And to do that without substances or maybe a forced spiritual experience. And I think an MROP would give you training wheels to maximize, say, even if you did decide down the road to do something like a psychedelic retreat, because there's no one and done. The MROP is not going to initiate you, just like psychedelics or 5 sessions of the EMDR or pick your poison. Nothing is going to make it a one and done. You're cured, you're healed, and you're enlightened for the rest of your life. And I think the MROP, I continue to believe the MROP has more rich substance in the areas that men need the most than my exposure to other men's groups.
You've had a, rich depth of experience. You knew Jim Clarke going into this retreat, the Men's Rites of Passage. You've read Father Richard's stuff. You no doubt met him and read Adam's Return, among other books. So you had a really good sense of what you were about to experience. What, though, did anything change in you, in your own views of initiation, of masculinity, of even spirituality from that experience?
I can't say that anything did. And just to be super fair, I have legally gone on some of these psychedelic retreats with other veterans and first responders, even though I don't even drink alcohol. I've never smoked weed. I wanted to see what that was all about and did a lot of research. And I've done some of the different medicines out there. And then I would get done and a veteran would be like, "So are you changed?" And I'm like, "No." And what that medicine did, and I'll say the medicine is unconditional love. And I've experienced unconditional love and the presence of God in my language, or peace, even during pain and adversity and storms, through the appropriate healthy relationships, through consistent meditation and contemplative practices, through these other silent retreats and nature trips, and even sensory deprivation float tanks, and being in spiritual direction and being in therapy. Some of the same type of peace or the release of unconscious material, because you can go to an MROP and part of it is co-regulation, where you can calm down your physiology in a community of like-minded men, and you have some other men role modeling being vulnerable, and that allows you hopefully to take the chance to be vulnerable and to expose yourself in a way that you find out you're not the only one that has experienced some of these universal themes of suffering. And that can be so transformative and allow for emotional sobriety and an increase in consciousness. And so I haven't found the retreats that work for me. Retreats are the 10 days silent retreats with no phones, no books, no nothing, or say like some of these Canada trips with my dad. We've been stranded in the wilderness and snow or rainstorms where the guide can't pick us up and we don't know if we're going to make it out and we're going to get hypothermia because we can't start a fire. Some of those things have been like spiritual experiences beyond what I've had on any type of men's work, first responder, veteran retreats. And yet I have to continue to recognize that other people are not going to have those trips with my father, their own father, or have a Father Jim as a spiritual director for 10 years, or the Father Hurley, who's the director of spiritual formation in Rome at a seminary. That's who I had before Father Jim. So I've just been fortunate and blessed to have the mentors, the elders, and the peers throughout my life. And also to where when I went to football camp or prisoner of war, SWAT schools, sniper schools, yeah, because a lot of other men go through those. I went in them with the intention to grow spiritually. It wasn't me trying to get external validation for being a football player or SWAT guy. And even my experience in the immersion of suffering of others as a police officer was me feeling through discernment that that's where God wanted me. So all of those experiences in my life didn't break me down. They were spiritual experiences or post-traumatic growth, where I grew deeper in my faith through the exposure of other people's suffering and my own suffering. But I had an orientation of the lessons that Illumin tries to teach men. I had them going into all my other life experiences. So I wasn't as confused. And this is what I try to teach responders and veterans. Even if you have some of the intellectual knowledge and spiritual practices and the mentors and the peers, when the shitstorm hits, it's still going to be hard. Because to grow to the next level psychologically and spiritually, you have to be overwhelmed beyond the capacity of whatever tools or perspective you have right now. And it's not fun and it's not pleasant. So don't wait until you're on your second or third divorce or you lost your job and you're struggling with alcohol to be like, maybe now I'll sign up for that MROP and maybe now I'll think about therapy or spiritual direction. And that's often what does happen. It's the crisis and the brokenness that makes men vulnerable enough to want to do something like this. But my heart's desire is don't wait until you're that rock bottom, because it's that much harder to turn things around. And we all need community, mentors, and deeper teachings than what modern society is giving us. And especially these modern books and influencers on masculinity, like, make me want to vomit. They are not good teachings. And there's even some Netflix thing on masculinity that people have asked me to watch. I did 20 seconds of it and I was like, I can't even watch this. It's so unhealthy. So the role modeling we're getting from other men on, even on LinkedIn, definitely Instagram and TV, is just not healthy. And Illumin still has really good teachings that not just grown men, but I hope Illumin grows with its working with younger men. Like, I know Ned right now, I couldn't go, is with a bunch of 30-year-old guys in Utah doing like a vision quest. So yeah, like, I would love more men to have exposure to the MROP, even if it didn't significantly transform me in any way.
So who should go to the Rites? Who should consider this?
Well, as it is right now, I just talked about younger men. Now, younger men, because this is not a biological thing, but if you've experienced some suffering in your life that you realize you're possibly, if you're a person of faith, the morality rules to get to heaven, to see the white bearded guy in the sky, they no longer work now that, you're going through a divorce. Your child was diagnosed with autism. Your wife got diagnosed with breast cancer, or mom has Alzheimer, and you're the only sibling that lives close enough to help be a caretaker. Your work ethic, your intellectual capacity to figure things out is not going to solve those problems. So you've started to learn by now that you've achieved success in your life, but the way that you achieve that success is no longer working for the problems that are coming up. Or even if there's like an unknown spiritual thirst and yearning for something more than whatever you're getting, what is it like to do work on my head and my heart? And also, have you not had a community of men that you can be real about, and you're only talking about sports, sex, politics, and tits and ass? Like, guys will talk about the most superficial external things, even though it's like a man of faith or somebody that is loyal to their wife. But when they go to work or they're with their friends, people are still talking about bullshit. But nobody says, no, is anybody else stressed? Is anybody else struggling? Is anybody else thinking there's something more to life than this that we don't exactly understand? And nobody's given us a blueprint for this. And everybody else looks like they're happy online and at work. And so if you got any type of pain inside, or you're dealing with uncertainty and you don't have other men that it's safe to take your armor off or be vulnerable with, I would seriously consider the MROP and checking out your regional Illumin group, because you have nothing to lose, really. Like, it's not dangerous, right? You could, maybe you go and, like me, you're like, maybe I already sort of knew this stuff, but it's very likely you haven't had a lot of the experiences or done the type of work I've done. So you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I do know that these different, all types of men's work out there, but definitely Illumin. There's people that I haven't seen for 10 or 15 years that I saw on the silent retreat that we recently did. And it's like a day hasn't passed, almost like they're old friends, because there's something different about the friendships built on the contemplative fellowship. I don't know if every Illumin man would want me using that word, but the contemplative fellowship that's authentic around what's going on in your head, in your heart, in your spiritual life, in ways that maybe organized religion no longer meets that need for you, but you're still curious, then I think Illumin and the MROP would be very worthwhile. And we can't give away that which we do not possess for ourselves. Men want to be protectors, providers, and fixers, but often their well goes dry and they can't give their family, their friends, or their coworkers a drink of water. Take your foot off the gas, commit to an MROP where you're going to do some self-exploration, and most likely it's not going to be comfortable. This is not comfortable and easy for most men. Like, the doing the harder things is no longer, like in my world, people are still in their 50s posting up their workout, their cold plunge, their sauna, their strict meal. That is not doing harder things. Going to an MROP or going to a sound bath with your partner or going to a meditation or breathwork class or leaving your phone at home and spending 4 hours sitting by a lake. That's the doing harder things to deal with what's coming up from within. And with every one of us, there's something unconscious, most likely from your childhood, previous relationship patterns that are unhealed wounds that you're not even aware of. And you're not going to be aware of them unless you do something like the MROP and other work on your own too. So there's work you have to do alone, and then there's work you have to do in community. And I think the MROP is a good way to do some of that work or have some of that emotional sobriety happen in community. And then maybe you go home and stay connected to your men's group, but also look into therapy or spiritual direction or yoga or Tai Chi, Qigong, journaling. There's a lot of different ways to do nervous system regulation and self-reflection.
But who shouldn't come to a men's rites of passage?
Don't come if you think you already know it all and you have arrived and you ain't got shit to work on. Like, if you don't have the intention to grow or even a slight opening that maybe I'll see what this feels like and be vulnerable. Like, if you're not going to be honest, like I talk about this, you can go to therapy and not be honest with your therapist. It's not doing anything for you. And I know people that go to therapy and they're not honest with their therapist. So how much can that help you? You have to have the willingness to potentially be vulnerable with other men, or even if you're not going to be vulnerable with the other men when you're in counsel and group, there are times where you spend some time alone in nature. Are you willing to be honest with yourself? And are you willing to really, like, I don't know, when I went, smartphones weren't as much a thing, but I would hope that you're willing to say, I'm going to turn my phone off. I'm going to leave my phone in the car. And I'm going to tell everybody that I'm unplugged for these 4 or 5 days. And I'm really going to focus on myself, whatever that may look like. So if you're not willing to commit, because then you're not helping the other men that are there too on this similar journey. So if you're a know-it-all, if you're already enlightened, if you feel like you have nothing to work on and you're not willing to be open to the potential of being vulnerable, if you feel safe, you do need to feel safe with the other men there, whether in your group or whoever's, the staff. But don't go if you don't have the intentions to grow. I think that would be my answer.
What's the case for people that are first responders that work in the communities that you're familiar with from your work as a police officer, a soldier, football player, all those sorts of things? What's the case for them to participate?
I have told some of them to please go check out their regional group because, right, like at Awaken, I met people that were not broadcasting their politics, that were not virtue signaling. And again, I think these are sweet men that I get along with, some of them doing it. I'm in Southern California, so most of my exposure has been in an area that's so politically driven that it bleeds over into the Illumin stuff. And I just know that if a cop or a vet shows up, and even Richard Rohr, who I love Richard Rohr, and not in his books, but you watch a live talk with Oprah or a podcast, and he'll go off on Trump and start getting upset about that. So if a cop, a firefighter, a vet, or even a moderately conservative corporate America guy shows up, and then it turns into anti-Trump and DEI issues, then guys are going to be like, screw this, men's work is not for me. And then they may never go back and try it again. So if you're a first responder, a veteran, somebody with a high warrior archetype, like go check out your group and see if you feel safe and comfortable. And I would still challenge you, if you're secure enough in yourself as a first responder or veteran, even if you know it's going to be political, if you've done enough work on yourself to not get triggered around some of the flagpole planning there might be, would you still be willing to go and filter and sift through that? There's going to be some men here that aren't worried about that. There could be a weaver, a mentor, elder that I can learn from. And it's still useful to consider going to MROP, because the other retreats for first responders and veterans that I don't advise, if they're attached to faith, they're often very strong, like on this aggressive tribal Jesus, make Jesus great again. So it's attached to Trump and politics in another way that I don't find is useful. It's like polar opposites being dualistic. And they also still like crawl in the mud and spray cold water and shoot guns and scream at you to be a better father, husband, and entrepreneur. That's ramping up the nervous system. It's initiating the unhealthy aspects of the warrior that if you're entering the second half of life, as we would say, that part of the warrior needs to be the loyal soldiers that you discharge rather than go on a retreat and then get tribal around, quote, doing hard things like the workouts and saying we're going to be better husbands and fathers by working out more and cold plunging more and shooting machine guns, all things that I actually enjoy, right? So I don't want people to think Matt's not, I enjoy and implement these things into my life, most of them, but with a completely different intention. And I don't want to go on a retreat like that. And I have my friends that go on the retreats, and because they don't know what they don't know, and there's some ex-Navy SEAL or SWAT guy or guy that played in the NFL or is a CEO that's successful in the world's eyes, saying this is the way to do it. Wake up at 5 a.m., do your CrossFit, jiu-jitsu, and cold plunge. They, like me, at times in my life, I did martial arts, too many Bible studies, too many prayer groups, and I covered up emotional reactivity rather than be more vulnerable and sit with my pain or the uncertainty. So the MROP would be healthy for high warrior archetype men, as long as they could go and not be triggered if there is a participant or even a staff member that maybe talks about things that politically they don't agree with. And hey, both sides of the fence. Some of the guys in Illumin should spend some time with some of the conservative MAGA guys and not get triggered and try to learn from them. And people from my world, the vets, the first responders, and athletes should go spend time at Illumin or try the MROP and see life from that perspective to the best of their ability and start seeing what we have in common with all other men and all other human beings in general. And let's build bridges and points of connection rather than more divides and more hostility.
I really appreciate everything you said there. That's a lot to think about. I really want to ask this one more question though before we end, and certainly our conversations could go on and on. You bring up a lot of great stuff, Matt. But what I want to know is, would you tell the guy that's afraid of going into the rites or finds himself at the rites in a situation like yours, something's not working for him, he has the opportunity at that moment to either lean in and still get a lot out of the experience or kind of just check out completely. But we know that a lot of it pivots from the ability of a man to kind of lean into the experience. So you had a challenging experience with a man that was wanting to be your mentor in a way that wasn't, you weren't receptive to or needing. What would you tell a guy that's afraid of that situation?
Well, as you were asking the question, what came up for me is a sports psychology lesson. And I don't know if it's a direct application, but if you're an athlete before a big performance and you're anxious and you have anxiety and you have butterflies, we'll say make the butterflies fly in formation. It's a natural reaction before some type of big event or game to have anxiety or maybe even some fears or I thought about it, the Air Force Academy, we had to jump off a 10-meter platform, and I'm not much of a water guy. And I realized the longer I stand at the edge, thinking about what could go wrong or paralysis by analysis, the harder it was, like just get up there and jump off. None of us can do this journey alone. This is spiritual theology. This is psychological research. Like you cannot do this journey alone. You need other guys to do your healing and growing with. And the reason that these men's groups exist and the reason that the mental health statistics are horrific for men, is because people have the fear of being vulnerable. And these aren't my words, in dealing with Green Berets, Navy SEALs, the hardcore ghetto patrol cops, firefighters, if I share my story and people will start sharing their story or their feelings about something, their dad was an alcoholic and never came to their sports games. They've been in relationships with women that have treated them like garbage. And then they may realize it ties into something my mom didn't give me that I was seeking out in other unhealthy women. And they start identifying parts of their story that hurt. And then they're like, I'm so sorry, Matt. They apologize. And they say, I'm being a bitch, fag, crazy, weak, or broken. It's such a universal thing for men to think that feeling their feelings around things that have harmed them or just were not nourishing or affirming in ways that we all need, that something's wrong with them. And that's not the case. And men will continue to suffer in silence, I think, because of the fear that you're you're speaking of, the fear or anxiety of somebody confronting them. And even if it turns out to be a situation like mine where it's not helpful, well, hopefully you can just be like, hey, pal, this ain't helpful. I don't think it applies to me. And if you're not safe, I was safe enough to hang in there, get up and leave and seek out somebody either on staff, or there's going to be somebody most likely in your council. I got something in common with that guy and I like what he said. And maybe I'm not even ready to share it with them, but I'm going to hang out with that guy more and listen to his story because it resonates with mine. And I've seen that in men's work too, where the guy may not open up on the MROP or a particular retreat, but after they go home, there's going to be a guy in that group that he sends a text or an email, or if they live close enough, he's going to get coffee with, and he still may not tell him for 2 or 3 months. 3 months down the road, he says, you said something at the MROP that relates to my story that I haven't told anybody about ever. And now I feel safe enough to share it with you. So even if you have anxiety, they don't force you to share, right? So you can go, and like you said, some men may not fully participate, but it still could be beneficial to see other men that drop their guard and share some of their stories and have vulnerability. And if there's one guy there that you end up respecting and connecting with, that's worth it.
Brother, thank you so much. I want to tell you that, I'm one of those guys that has a really strong inner critic. And to be honest with you, if I had met you 10 years ago, I would have been just terrified of you because you embody to me almost what my inner critic, if he was a person, I would imagine him looking like, big muscled guy. He's been through the boot camp and training. He speaks with authority and just, very strong. But I've come to know you over the last, it's only been about 6 months or so, maybe, less than a year. But I really see that you embody what it means to be a mature man. And I also know that your soul is very much about helping and healing others in as much as, it's about your own journey. And I'm very grateful. So thank you so much.
Likewise, Brian. It was awesome to meet you in person, the emails. And hey, guys out there, if you don't, something else that I think is healthy is like I send an email to somebody like Brian and other men in Illumin. I get a very significant, could be a 2 or 3 page where we're sharing our life stories over emails. I have a Navy SEAL buddy, former SEAL. We leave voice text memos almost every day doing what me and you do with our emails. And even though me and you don't email every day, and that is part of what is so beautiful is to have other men to share parts of our journey with and find those points of connection. And right away, even though initially my emails to Illumin leadership, for guys out there that don't know, I've been somewhat critical of them not being open to the warrior archetype. And some people maybe got my emails and are like, God, this guy might be a dick. I don't know. But in person, it's like open arms, big hugs, totally vibing out with positive energy in ways that inspired me. And now it made me want to keep going back to Awaken every year and continue to grow with the men in Illumin. Even if it may not be the place yet where my ex-Navy SEAL and Green Beret and SWAT buddies are like, that seems appealing to me. It's still a place, if you want to do the deeper journey, where men are being vulnerable. And I appreciate your emails so much. I want you to know that. And sometimes I don't have the time to respond back at the same level that you sent it, but I'm like, oh my God, I love this. This feeds my soul. So thank you.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. And how do people find out more about what you're doing and maybe even get in touch with you?
My website is thetacticalchaplain.com. I'm on LinkedIn if my last name's spelled on this episode, Matt Domyancic on LinkedIn. Not active a ton on Instagram. I don't post about myself, but Thin Blue Line Spirituality and the Tactical Chaplain. And anybody that wants to chat, please reach out. And even if you're not a veteran or first responder, that's what my ministry and my nonprofit is for. But I want to do more bridge building with people that are not first responders and veterans and actually try to share what it's like more to be a first responder and veteran in a way that a lot of civilians don't understand. And so how can we lean on each other as men from different backgrounds and all walks of life and try to grow deeper rather than more of these very emotional divides over political type things. So I have a huge heart for wanting to connect with all kinds of men. So don't look at my website and think, well, I'm not a cop, a firefighter, or a vet, or a jock. So this doesn't apply to me. Like if there's something we spoke about and you want to talk about it, please send me an email. I'll give you my phone number and we can jump on a call.
Thanks so much, brother. I love you, and I look forward to staying in community with you.
Love you too, brother.
For those listening who are now feeling a tug in their own soul and are curious to learn more, allow me to share a bit about the history of these rites. The men's rites of passage was originally developed by Father Richard Rohr and was first offered at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico in 1996. While it was supported for many years by the Center for Action and Contemplation, since 2012, Illumin has been the steward of this work, preserving and adapting the rites for men all over the world. To learn more about the history and the theology behind this work, I highly recommend reading Adam's Return by Richard Rohr. If you are ready to make your rites, there are 4 opportunities in the United States and another in the United Kingdom in 2026. The first is in Northern California, May 13th through the 17th. The second in the United Kingdom, July 22nd through the 26th. And in Illinois, August 12th through the 16th. There's one on the East Coast in New Jersey, September 16th through the 20th. And the final one of the year is in Texas, which is in MROP and Umbrales, our Spanish language rites, September 30th through October 4th. You can find details and registration information at illumin.org/MROP or illumin.org/events. Additionally, mark your calendars for Awaken, the annual national gathering of Illumin, taking place November 5th through the 8th in New Mexico. You can find more at illumin.org/awaken. Finally, a special thank you to our sponsor, Choosing Presence. If today's conversation moved you, I encourage you to bring more intentionality into your daily life. Download the Practicing Presence app for free at choosingpresence.org/app. It's a simple but profound way to stay connected to the journey we've discussed today. Thank you for listening to Follow Me to the MROP. Until next time, brothers, stay present.